Hello, Parsons students. This is the Core Topics 3 workshop for week 6 on internal branding, principles, and process. My name is Marcos Chavez, and I'm a part-time faculty here at Parsons. I'm one of the teachers for the branding section in the Core 3 Topics course this fall. And I'm excited to be participating in this series of lectures and discussions with you. We've had some really great previous encounters with the various teachers at the school and have gotten really great insights through these workshop lectures and the exercises. And we're going to continue this week talking about internal branding, and I'm going to share with you my perspective. So today I want to talk about branding from an internal perspective, but I want to kind of put that in the context of branding overall and the branding process. So we're going to talk a little bit about what a brand is and clarify some terms so that we think of it from a communication design perspective. And we're going to look at the differences between internal and external branding. And I'm going to share with you thoughts on the process of internal branding or branding overall, and share the process from my own perspective as an individual and also as a design professional with a design practice, and look at how internal branding connects with the way that we work and even the way that we live. So the big question to start off with is what is a brand? And this idea of what a brand is not, it's not a new concept for any of us. I don't think that this idea of brand was introduced to any of you by coming here to Parsons to learn about design. We all have a basic understanding of what a brand is in some form. We see it everywhere we turn, every moment of the day, practically, depending on what we're doing. It's a pervasive thing. Brands, they're in our everyday lives, and they help us engage with the everyday things we do. And they're there to serve many purposes. They're there to help us make choices. They're there to help us navigate through our everyday activities. They're there to help us make our lives better. They keep us nourished. If you consider nourishment Ben and Jerry's ice cream, they keep us fit. They're there to help us make choices about who we are personally in this kind of personal brand context, and how we decide to put ourselves out in the world with the fashion choices we make. They get us around safely and incredibly quickly, and they keep us healthy, and they provide us navigation through whether it's the spaces we walk through or the spaces we go through online. They provide us assurance that we can go to places outside of our home or workplace and have a place where we can be at home. They help us play and learn, and brands help us to encounter other people and express ourselves creatively, and they keep us hydrated. So brands are very much an important part of our life because it's a result of the culture we've built and the way that we've created our society so that we have opportunities to share in each other's lives and be able to prosper and to be able to grow as a society and as individuals. So as frivolous as any one of these brands may look or feel, or whether the personal preferences of any of them from your own point of view are good or bad, they're there to both improve our lives and provide livelihoods for those who are maintaining them and working for those companies and building them, and are something that I think we can celebrate as an important part of our culture. So as we dive into this idea of being communication designers around this industry, this world of business, it's important that we dive in energetically, but that we dive in with good form um, and that we don't hurt ourselves in the process of diving. And so let's take a look at what uh, a definition of a brand may be from some of the experts out there who have worked in this industry for a while. This is a man named Marty Neumeyer who wrote a book a couple decades ago called The Brand Gap. And he has a pretty insightful definition of branding that I thought was worth sharing. And he says that a brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or company. Now, on the face of it, that may seem like very almost non-technical or not specific enough, but there's some deep insights in what he has to say here. And what he's sharing, what he's unveiling here is this idea of a brand residing within an individual, within a person's gut feeling. It's about the perception that individuals have about a product or a company or a service. And that thought was a breakthrough in terms of looking at how we see brands. Initially, brands were thought of as the expression of what any organization or company would do when they created the product they wanted to sell. And that brand existed in the logo and in the product itself and the advertising that was out there. And earlier in the evolution of commerce and branding and overall the culture of the market, the kind of medium that was out there available for people to encounter brands was much more limited. We had television ads, or we had newspaper ads or magazines, and we had stores, and pretty much it's kind of limited to those more encounters that were one-on-one or that were within this more analog world. But now with the digital age, the places where brands can directly come in contact with people has grown quite a bit. And what this has meant is that brands aren't really owned by the organizations that create them or that manage them or that market them. They're really owned by you and by me and by all those out there encountering the world. And that this implies a lot. It implies that the control of a brand is really in the hands of others, and that as professional marketers or branders or designers, we have the ability to influence that and the tools to do that. But in the end, this is something that is not, the agency is in the person. And that was a pretty interesting thought. Another person who I thought had something great to say about this was the former CEO of Disney, Michael Eisner. And his quote says, "A brand is a living entity, and it's an enriched or undermined cumulatively over time, the product of 1,000 small gestures." So a brand is a living entity, and it's enriched or undermined cumulatively over time, 1,000 small gestures. So this begins to deepen this notion that a brand not only is not in this physical world, but it's within the impressions of many people, and that it's both grown in a positive way or deteriorated in a negative way, depending on all the small moves that happen within what a brand does or is perceived, these 1,000 small gestures going on. And it's not necessarily the small gestures of what a marketing team does or what a designer can do. It's the dialogue going on within people and within the impressions of individuals. So, calling it a living entity, it means that brands are alive and in a sort of real way. And that this implies a time element, that we don't, as professionals, create the elements for a brand. We don't just go through the process of creating a strategy, developing a product, branding that product, packaging it, creating standards, putting it out in the world. That's one half of the coin. That's the birthing process. That's the definition of what a brand is. And then we turn that over to all the individuals who are stakeholders in that brand, all the individuals who are loyal to it, the quote unquote tribe of people who believe in the brand, who engage in the brand, who utilize the benefits of that, and who are looking for that value that the brand offers. They then take those reins over, and it becomes a different level of communication to 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 see it more as like a dialogue between those of us who are in the branding profession and those of us who are the consumers of that brand. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about logos. In our week 4, my fellow professor Alan was really advocating this idea that logos are the kind of pinnacle of branding and the ultimate expression of external branding. And I completely think that that's spot on, and agree with this idea that logos are these just amazing tools. They're little compact, like little capsules that have so much information put inside them, and that we as these 21st century people have this incredible ability to look at these little signals, these little elements that are made of colors and graphic shapes, and not always, but sometimes words and letters, and that the combination of these little compact gestures, we all have this ability, and we're all trained, or we're all able to decipher immediately what a symbol stands for, what a logo stands for. And I kind of want to go through and just take this exercise that I have and do it with everyone here right now. I know we can't do feedback with a asynchronous lecture, but I want each of you to go do this exercise with me. I've put together 12 logos, a dozen logos that are identities for brands and for companies that are out there in the world today. And of course, ones that I think are strong, effective logos. And I want to kind of test that to see if the effectiveness of a logo is really that good. And if you're going to test a logo, you'd probably want to see how quick it works. How fast does it work? You know, like an aspirin. How quick can it make my headache go away? Well, how quick does a logo work? How long does it take us to unpack the meaning of it, to understand the values, the principles, the offerings, the value that you get from a brand? And so what I'm going to do is, this is a little bit low tech, but I've got these 12 slides, and I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to like click as fast as I can reasonably, and to go through these 12 slides, like less than a second each. Now you might think, well, that's not very fair. I don't know if I'll be able to see and understand all this deep meaning that comes from each of these little pieces of color and type and shape, but I want to see. So I'm going to do it now. I'm going to go through 12, and then maybe try to write it down, or just think about it'll be too fast to write down, but let's see. So here we go. 12 logos. Can you spot them? Can you identify them? Can you recognize them in a short period of time? Okay, that was fast. That was fast, but think about what you just saw. You saw lots of worlds, lots of places, lots of encounters, meaning. There was so much there, but what you actually saw was a lot of black and white and color and simple shapes, a lot of white space, a lot of black space. But these logos were there. They were all the same size. That helped. But I would guess that if we were to think about it right now, how many did I remember seeing? I think a lot of you would start making a list, and you'd probably each get to 5 or 6 of them, right? At the least. And if I were just to go through, and if you said that wasn't fair, that was too fast. Well, okay, I'll give you that. So let's do it right now. I'm gonna go slower. And I think that each and every one of you would be able to identify pretty much all of them within the half a second or so that I'll do it. So here you go, one more time slower. Okay, so I that was still fast. That was still fast. But if I was in the room with you right now and I said, how many of you recognize all those logos? I think we would get pretty much all the hands. And maybe there might be one or two that wasn't recognized because of just not being aware of what that organization was. But I don't know what that would be. So I think we can pretty much in that little exercise just see or remind us that we are really well developed as individuals, our visual perceptions. And I don't think it's because we're all at Parsons and we have special talents or gifts or we've exercised our visual prowess in a way that allowed us to identify those brands. I think that we as a culture, from the youngest of individuals to, of course, the older, we all have this ability to recognize that. And this little old meme here, it still has its charm, I think, because it does tell us a little bit about what it is that we're able to do. And when you look at these two categories, brands and plants, one can make a really pretty solid argument that both of these things pretty much are pervasive within our lives in a daily way. And it doesn't even mean that you have to necessarily live in a world that is full of nature with trees all around you, or that if you live in a world that's void of nature, that you're still there's trees everywhere. I mean, in New York City or in any big city, having that level of encounter with nature still exists. And you could also make the argument that if you're living in nature and you're living out in the country or in a rural area, that you don't encounter brands, and that's not true, because they're right in our pockets and they're right in front of us all the time. It's not far away from us, no matter how remote we may be. So if we look at this other test, and we've already had 2 quizzes in this lecture, this one here asks to identify both. And I think, again, each and every one of us pretty much can list within the first few seconds what those brands on the left are. Maybe Lacoste might know. You guys know what that is, right? Or Volkswagen looks a little crooked, but you can see it pretty easily. And there's no color here. It's all just hand-drawn outlines. On the other side, on the right side, can we identify those? Maybe many of you can, and I hope that's true. I know that I can see there's pine needles there, but I don't, and I know that's maybe in maple leaf, and maybe there's some oak thing here. Birch comes to mind, but I'm not sure. So it's not as, I'm not as literate as I am about the natural world, as we all are about the brand world. Okay, so understanding a brand, and let's go a little further now and talk about this process of branding. And I think the way to look at branding, it's also kind of aligning with the idea that brands are alive, right? That they're a living entity, that they're ongoing, they're rooted in time. So brand is you can say it's a growing dialogue. And how do we make ourselves of the brand available to others? That's kind of where the branding process starts to happen. We want to engage in interactions. We want to be able to have discourse as a brand with the culture that we're part of. And branding then becomes this disciplined process that we use in order to be able to build awareness to these potential customers or current customers or people in the world we want to be in. And in creating that awareness and in that engagement, branding is about trying to build loyalty, trying to build trust. And in the world we live in, we are so fortunate and blessed to be able to have so many choices out there, and that brands are about providing the clear differentiation for those choices and building trust. And all the things we have to do in order to express what a brand is about and build that trust is what branding is about. And giving us a choice between, one brand to another. So each of us has the values that we have. Each of us have a perspective about what life is about, what we hold to be important. And we want to see a reflection of those values within the choices we make with the brands we have. We want to support what we feel our mission in life is about. By even in the smallest of choices or in the most irrelevant of choices, we try to connect what our personal brand is with what the values of a brand in the world is. And for branding, it's about making that connection clear. And of course, branding has to do with living in this world of the free market and being part of this idea of competing with others and wanting to be chosen, being chosen from a array of choices. And in this world of the free market, branding is about helping employees to do their job, to sell their product, to convince people of an idea, and to use this language, to give them a language, to give them this culture that they want to reflect back to the people they're trying to have this dialogue with. And in order to do that within an organization, branding is really quite a collaborative, cooperative endeavor, and it requires lots of people being in sync, being like-minded, understanding what they mean and what they're about. And to do that, there's branding is really about being able to reflect a level of leadership, that clarity is brought from the top down, and that branding is an ongoing process that requires an investment in the future. Okay, so why do we need these brands? Just real quick, people have infinite choices, so we want to help them with that. Brands provide an emotional connection, so there's really a lot of thoughtfulness about branding, and the idea of what a product is about is crucial. It's at the sort of this why factor. Just on the practical side, choices and navigation. We want to make our lives as easy as possible, and we want to make quick decisions, go back to things we know are working. So there's a trust and belief factor, and it's about a lifelong relationship. And if we just were to kind of be a little more specific in terms of the primary functions of branding, there's three things. It's about navigation, reassurance, and then engagement. So now that's a good picture of what branding is from an overall communication design perspective. And now we want to get into the sort of these two different aspects within branding. And so we want to talk about what internal branding is versus an external branding. And maybe the two good words to see this is brand emergence and brand ignition. So to emerge is to come out, to create, to come out of nothing, to emerge. And internal branding it starts at the beginning of the founding of a brand, but it doesn't stay there. It just happens to be that it's part of that first step. And it's about this idea of not only building a brand strategy, building a language, building a communication, but it's about continuing to reinforce that, to adjust that, to communicate that within a company, within its employees, within other people that work to support the brand, and then to translate that into an external expression. So external branding is the brand expression based on these values, based on these principles, based on what the product is offering. The internal brand goes as a strategy and then is made external through an expression. And if we want to get a little more specific of what that means, these are two kind of pie charts that dissect where the brand touch points are within internal versus external branding. And just to remind you, a brand touch point is that place where a person encounters a brand. And those places, you might think, well, I encountered it at the store. I pick up a product, or I click it online and it comes to my door. But brands are experienced much further than just at that sort of product touch point. They're in the engagement you have online with social media. They're in the way you see the employees, the way you interact with employees, whether it's verbally or by phone or by text. And if we look at these various touch points and how they're separated, you look on the left side, and internal branding is more about the attitudes, images, and actions that are expressed within a brand. So it's a lot of it as the word implies, is internal. It's about the employee education and the environment of the company and the way that it sees its obligation towards society and its corporate citizenship. And it's about the operations and its product innovations, and it's the way it handles its training and handbooks and employee education. And on the right side, we see that external branding really is just based on the purchase experience, on the encounter, whether it's the pre-purchase experience and the things that happen within that context, or whether it's during the actual purchase experience itself and all the elements that are connected with that, or whether it's what happens after the purchase and how the experience with the actual product is in a person's life. The brand experience doesn't just stop when you make a choice for your home, when you buy a chair and you bring it home. It happens every time you sit in it for the life of the chair. So the post-purchase experience is also a important aspect of internal and external branding. So if we were to zoom in very directly at the deepest level, or at the most micro level of internal branding, we can kind of look at it in terms of what's the DNA of an internal brand. And basically it can be said in this couple of short statements. An internal brand is a company's purpose, and it's the meaningful reason why a brand exists. So here we see that now we have moved away from what a company does or what a brand offers in the literal way. And now we're talking about this key word here, which is the reason why. So internal branding really defines and supports and expresses the reason why a brand exists. So when it comes to internal branding, we want to really focus on the idea of purpose. And when we look at how internal brands are expressed, it's again starts with this idea of emerging from nothing to something, and it starts with an idea, and this involves, there's very human aspect to this. It involves an entrepreneur or a team of entrepreneurs working in collaboration to birth an idea that's meant to make our lives better, easier, safer. And it's about creating this value in this idea, which is offered through whatever the product or service that a brand has to offer is. And a lot of times these first two things in the process of building a brand, it kind of goes from the idea to what the product is. And then the branding process might be seen as like, let's get a logo and let's stick it on the product and put it out there. And a lot of times that does happen. And this next step of thinking about the meaning or the why factor doesn't always get done in a quote unquote branding process. It's sort of the thing that's harder to spot or see as valuable. So brands that are successful, or brands that are doing it right, or are always looking to be more foundational and to go through the exercise of understanding why it is that they're in business. And you might say, well, if they're in business, they're in business to make money. And I think that's an old-fashioned way of looking at it, because making a profit, that's a result. That's a result of something else. And the result of something else should be this why factor. Like, why are you in business? What is it that you want to do to improve society? And I think more and more businesses are shifting towards this idea of social responsibility, or responsibility towards what it is they're in business for. And I think that we as consumers have the ability to more and more demand that, to want to know, what is it, the why is it that I want to engage myself or create loyalty between you? Why do I want to join your tribe as a brand? And the more that each of us individually hold our values at the highest level and have a sense of responsibility towards what we purchase and how we live, the more business will reflect that, because they are interested in doing things that help us as a culture and as individuals. So this finding the meaning and the why is important in order to be able to reflect that back. So we just have to ask a few simple questions as an emerging brand or as an existing brand. Who do we help? Why do we help them? How do they feel? What difference can we make? So again, these are big human interaction principles that that reflect this idea that branding is not so much connected, or is not solely connected to the idea of growing a business, but it's really about tapping into the human element. And if we as designers want to look at how we can use our influence, our skill sets to improve things, working within the process of branding can offer that. It can offer that because it taps into the human element. It allows us to engage with many people, to provide access for individuals' lives to improve or to be made better because of the offerings of a brand, and to support each other in terms of wanting to have shared values and goals that make things better. So again, the brand purpose, this why factor, it becomes the driver for the business. If we're setting up a business, if we're doing it in a way that's going to be sustainable and attractive in a broad way, we're not driving a business solely on the idea that we must make profits. I know a lot of talk in the world is about that, about the not so good side of what businesses might be about. And that, of course, exists, and we as consumers can make the choices to support those brands that do have drivers that go outside the profit endeavor, and that a brand purpose becomes the reason why we're making the choice, and that we, by doing that as consumers, can inspire companies and brands who are full of people like us wanting to make a living and be able to do something that's meaningful. If each business is built on a purposeful meaning, then we can better support those by the choices we make, and create a world that's better, one purchase at a time, so to speak. Okay, so when we communicate in the communication of purpose provides meaning, it ends up not only benefiting our product itself, or the results we may get as a business, but internally it helps us in a business by creating an environment that's more positive, an environment that is more meaningful for people to engage in. And work is important for all of us, right? I mean, I know you guys are students right now, and of course you've all worked at some level, but when you finish your time here at school and you turn over the mindset of being a student and transition into being a professional, you're going to want to work in an environment that's aligned with your values, and that is worthy of putting your life time into. And so a purposeful company, a meaningful company, can become more creative, it can become more efficient, more productive, and it internally can create a happier and more fulfilled individual who's part of that company. And in effect, transfer that into the people they reach out to. So just one more quote from a guy named Simon Sinek. You may have seen his TED Talks on the why factor, but he says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's just such great news in terms of us as a culture based on the need to make purchases in this free market. If we can drive the idea of the why being important as consumers, we're going to continue to inspire businesses to look at their why and brand themselves around meaningfulness. And I think if I were to just pull out one story that supports this idea of whyness, we would have to go to Steve Jobs and his journey with Apple, and look at how he understood this idea that it's about what a company does and why they do it versus what they do and what they have to offer. We all know that story of Apple, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but in a nutshell, after he had founded the company and led it for many years, eventually he was thrown out, and Apple lost its way. It didn't remember why it was that Steve Jobs had started this company. And when he came back, he decided that he was going to bring why front and center to what Apple was about, and from the inside out, internally and externally, create that as a priority towards how Apple expressed itself. And one of the first things he did was create this advertising campaign, or maybe that's selling it too short. He created this mantra of think different that became the nucleus for how Apple would see itself from the inside, how Apple would see itself as innovators, as artists, almost as pirates, people who are out there to change the world, who can do it by having a different kind of mindset, to be against the conventional way of thinking, and to break through into new places by the way that they approached their way of life, and by, of course, having the tools to do that. So this campaign, which was launched, as a start towards Steve Jobs' second reign, or second coming, was about featuring these great humans of the 20th century, and featured people like Muhammad Ali and Miles Davis and Pablo Picasso, Amelia Earhart, Maria Callas, Lucy and Ricky Ricardo, and Bob Dylan and Mahatma Gandhi, Einstein, Martha Graham. All these they saw Apple saw as pioneers, because they refused to behave in a conventional way and live life on their own terms, and succeeded because of it. So this mindset of think different became a way of life, and became a way of thinking that was encouraged within their company. So as an internal brand idea, it was very successful in not only inspiring the engineers and the developers within the company to continually come up with breakthrough products, to go from being a computer company to being in the telecommunications business, to, and to who knows what next. But this then showed up as part of the brand experience for us as consumers. When we think of Apple, yeah, of course, we think of the devices we have, but we also think of the experience we have when we're encountering the employees, or when when we are in their unique spaces. And so I think this idea of taking a simple two-word statement like think different and making it the nucleus for a way of a company puts itself out and shows its why, this is a great example of that. All right, so process starts within. So I want to go through and take you back a little bit towards my own personal journey. And I remember being your age, and there I was sitting in an art history class. Art history class, I'm sure you've all been in one of these, maybe several times, but I'm in this class sitting in the back. It's like dark, the slides being projected on the wall. And the professor was talking about the French post-impressionists, and he came upon this image came down the screen. It was Paul Gauguin, Day of the God. And I was, it was a long night the night before, and I was struggling to pay attention, and maybe slightly starting to fall asleep. And I don't think I was bored. Maybe I was. And this slide came up, and the professor said, with a very authoritative and definitive voice, he said, this painting asks the three big questions in life. And I immediately took notice. I woke up in more ways than one, maybe, and thought to myself, wait, there are three big questions in life? I was not aware that there were questions that could be scaled down to just three, that asked the questions that each of us needed to know and to ask ourselves. And what were these three big questions I needed to know? So he said, and I'm paraphrasing maybe a little bit here, I brought it down to these three big questions in life. Where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going? And I remember sitting there and going, wow, those are the three big questions, and those are the things that I need to confront and address. As simple as they may sound to you right now, and as simple as maybe they sounded to me then, these are simple questions that I think we don't necessarily go through our lives asking ourselves and then living towards. And in the same way, to bring it to internal branding, is maybe the kind of questions that companies don't necessarily ask themselves in order to establish the foundation of what their purpose is. So the three big questions in life for each of you need to be asked, and maybe asked repeatedly, in order for you to each be able to develop your own sense of purpose, in order for you to have your own meaning in your life. Because by asking the three big questions in life, by looking back to seeing where you come from, and I don't just mean your immediate heritage, maybe way back to where you come from, where is it that, what is eternal, looking at that level of where you came from, to looking at the idea of why you're here, why is it that you exist right now in perspective to where you came from, and then to take those ideas, to take those influences, and to try to establish this idea of where you're going, to create this mantra, this idea, this cause for yourself, like define the idea of what your life is about. So for me, that was inspirational. And once I finished college, I worked a couple of jobs, but then it was time for me to do the thing I wanted to do, which was to continue to develop the purpose of my life by establishing a design company, and to start a design firm that reflected what I wanted to do with my career. And so I got together with my buddy from college, who was an architect, and we created this idea of TODA. And TODA is my design company that I've had the great fortune to be building for the past 20 years. And this is just a shot of what it looks like inside. Because for me, this idea of being able to control my internal environment, to be able to establish where it is I work, who it is I work with, and what it is I do, and that opportunity that we get to have here in America was something that I completely wanted to seize and give a nod to my parents who came here from South America in order for me to be able to have this opportunity. So to have this purpose within our career is a gift that each of us has. We're designers, and we are being trained to be able to express ideas in a visual way. And like you have this opportunity, I took the opportunity to build a practice and to create an environment where I could work with people who had various talents, who were amazing individuals, and then to be able to have that team engage and work with various clients and people out there who have specific missions or causes of their own, ones that we could get on board with and help support. So as a company, we call ourselves a multidisciplinary design firm, which means that our focus is really not specifically on one medium, or the idea of like being specialists for within one type of work, but maybe it's because of my lack of attention span at times, but or maybe to better put it, to my broad interests. The idea of like being able to work on projects, whether they're print projects or packaging projects, whether they're digital, whether they're exhibit projects, to really look at the broadness of visual communication, and even to expand that within the idea of how words are part of the communication we do as text. So like naming companies, or being able to brand them from the start, or to jump into an organization that exists and help influence them in their decisions. And to do that, it was really about knowing that working with people was important, and having a philosophy for my company that really was about collaboration and engagement with many different types of people. So in order to do that in this internal branding kind of way, and this was not something that I did initially, like I just lectured and preached you should do. I started my company with a little bit of that in mind, and knowing that what I wanted to do. But the formal process of really looking at our internal branding came years after we started the company. And in a way that wasn't so bad, because then we had teams of people and we had some experience, but we did take the time to look at our internal brand and to try to discover who it is that we were, and what our strengths were, what our weaknesses were, and really make a clear vision of how we as a company could build our future based on a strategy and a plan that was thought through within this internal branding process. So we worked with a strategist from Germany. We have an office in Germany and one here in Brooklyn. And so both our teams kind of got together and we went through this kind of workshop process of understanding and dissecting what we thought about the company, what we thought about our clients, how we wanted our atmosphere to be, and then what we thought the result would be in terms of what our unique proposition would be. So here you just see some of the elements within that. And not to get into anything too specifically, but we did kind of come up with this interesting idea of TOTA being the wild card, which is like sort of maybe the one that unexpectedly emerges as the best choice, or the one that unexpectedly comes up with a unique idea. And, you know, we kind of went through this process of getting input from people and doing surveys within the staff, and having this kind of mind map experience where we dissected you know, from the random idea, the random impression to then organizing it in a way that ended up pointing our way to like how we could benefit our clients, or how we looked in comparison to the competition, and how we can fit into the market best. You know, and then we tried to find ways to maybe express this in a simple way, and ended up with coming up with a way to go back to simplicity, and to reflect our modernist values by engaging in a medium that maybe wasn't so high-end design, and creating this cake in a sort of celebration of who we were, in order to kind of give us the idea of what grounded us as a company, and what each person in our company knew that they were about together. So doing that was a little bit of a responsibility, because now we kind of uncovered what we were about, and it was a matter of continuing to live up to those ideals, and to do that within in an eternal way. And here on this slide are just kind of a mess of photos that just show a small slice of the things we've done over the years in terms of really wanting to support the values we establish for ourselves internally as a brand, and to be able to look at the people within our teams, the people within our company, and also the clients that we work with as an important synergistic dynamic that we wanted to always fuel in a way that provided the right kind of positive energy. So whether it was creating design exhibits within our own spaces, or whether it was celebrating, you know, different aspects of life with the parties we had, whether it was like moving to a new office, or whether it was just creating a party that had to do with celebrating some of the legacies of design, like the Bauhaus, that we thought had interesting things, or doing workshops in order and inviting people outside of our own team to participate in different workshops. I think we're trying to compete in a citywide condom redesign packaging competition that was going on here in NYC at the time. Or even when we thought about our own wellness and well-being from a physical standpoint, looking at, you know, participating as a team in endeavors like this race we had from the top of a mountain in New Hampshire to the shores of the ocean. So practicing what we preach internally in order to create stronger, better teams with that reflected back our values in the work we do because of the way we lived. Okay, and then I want to, and it's getting late, I better go quicker. Sorry. Okay, so just one last thing to go through. I wanted to take you through a personal project that I created through TOTA, through my team here, over the past 4 years. And that was a series of cards that I created that are posters maybe as well, that would reflect back a certain kind of personal philosophy I have that reflected my ability to be creative, my ability to face this kind of like dragon of creating ideas and overcoming the difficulty of making something come from nothing to to be realized as a design or as an endeavor. So I created these different principles 1 year at a time, starting in 2017 up to 2020. And the full concept was kind of based on this idea, inspired by the print work we've done, or the printing process in general, and the kind of miracle of printing, that it can take the colors of C, Y, M, and K, which is cyan, which is this blue, magenta, just this pink, yellow, and K is black. And CMYK is the formula used in printing processes where they create dot patterns. And with those dot patterns and with these 4 colors, they can magically print anything. And that's where all imagery you see in magazines or illustrations, the printing process of CMYK is sort of the secret formula to be able to create imagery that comes from 4 simple elements. So I wanted to kind of explore what are the 4 simple elements that reflect back in the way that the attitudes we have towards the work we do. So in going through each of these quickly, I'll just say that the first one here, think it, say it, do it, was kind of reflecting this mantra maybe that you could repeat to yourself over and over again when stuck. And the idea is sort of this step process of like going from a thought, going to an expression, and then going to a physical realization of that, and then emerging from there as the idea. And think it is the smallest element on this layout, but it's actually the one that happens the most and that we have the most of, and maybe it should be flipped to be the biggest, because we all have ideas that we constantly have in our head that we're thinking about, that if, this is such a great idea, I should do it. At least for me, I know that there's just lists of them going on all the time. And many of those just live out there in these clouds and these little spheres. They don't become real. And how do you make those real? The next step, once you thought of it, is then to say it. And that's sort of the first act of courage, like express yourself, let it out, let it loose into the world. And when you say it to somebody, then there becomes a certain responsibility. You put it out there, it's now partially real, we might say. It's a expressed thought. And then from saying it, take that responsibility and then actually do it and create it. And the do it, of course, is the hardest part. So those are 3 kind of interesting formulas that I thought, that I know that I use as a way of reminding myself how to get something done. And then this other one is follow through, which is it's kind of a common term that you hear. It's kind of a sports thing a little bit, but it's definitely kind of this physicalness about how when you're doing something, you shouldn't just stop midway. In fact, it will hurt you if you stop midway, but to follow through is to go through from the very, very back of what you're doing all the way to the very, very end. And that full expression of an activity is important in doing something right. So follow through is really about this idea of how can I do something fully extend it from beginning to end. And then use what you got is maybe the one that looks the most inspirational. It's got a sunny kind of starburst, with the organic yeast growing serifs. But use what you got really has to do a lot with this idea of gratitude and looking at the things that are within you or outside of you, and how you could easily forget that the resources are abundant. And it's very easy for each of us to go, oh, if I only had a better computer, if I only had this app, or if I only took this class, or if I only had the right kind of space, or if I only had more time. And this rejects that. This says, no, you have it. It's there. It's right in front of you. It's right inside you. Use what you got. You have plenty. You just don't know it. So I find myself utilizing this one quite often and reminding myself of what I have in order to know that the raw materials have been provided and that I can easily accomplish my goals by using what I have. And then the last one is maybe the most important one. And this one was for this year. And not that I'm a prophet of doom, but be not afraid. We put this out in January before 2020 really came out, and it's proven to be quite handy this year. And be not afraid is a good idea. It's the words that are used in the most popular book ever published, and it's used the most in that book. And the idea of be not afraid really is about knowing that there is fear. Fear is the thing that confronts us every day, and that it's okay for there to be fear. It's just a matter of knowing that you have the strength to overcome that. And by taking action, by doing the things that are within you, gives you the ability to overcome that. So that gives you a little bit of insight of like my own internal process for what I think branding is about, and internal branding in specific. So thank you so much. I look forward to sharing with you some of my case study projects that I did in my next lecture, and I'll see you then.